Everybody, welcome to Bring It In. This is TrueHoop's little pandemic quarantine from home show. Today's going to be a big one. Jonathan Abrams and his potty training kids are here. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. What's up, guys?
Adena Jones is here. David Thorpe is here. And I didn't even know you two knew each other. I guess I should have. And there's a whole backstory. Should we just do that right off the top of the show? Something happened with a swimming class at USC. Adena, what's the deal?
The way I saw it was I was a studious student trying to make some extra cash. I was a lifeguard and I was a TA for our swimming class, and I had the illustrious Jonathan in my class. And about halfway through the semester, I was like, my time could be better spent doing other things. And so I quit. And Jonathan apparently was like really relying on me to teach him how to swim. And him and this other guy used to come in with like big t-shirts on. I'm like, you're going to drown with a t-shirt on. I believe you did well though in the rest of the class. I'm not sure. You can tell me.
Fingers crossed.
The other guy's name was Hiram. Hiram was probably one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. But yeah, it was a swimming class. There was probably 10 other kids, and it was a lot of fun. One day, Adena just disappeared. I was wondering what happened. I thought Hiram maybe drove her out. But the thing was, at USC, I was a print journalism major, and I knew I wanted to major in that. So I didn't have a minor, and I had to fill up all the rest of my other classes. And I used to pick all these like PE classes like just to have fun. So I took swimming. I took a weightlifting class with Gabe Pruitt and Nick Young were in that class.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I spent half my time at USC just playing weird sports.
I do feel like if the job you're abandoning is like life-saving, maybe you do a little check-in, you know?
Yeah. I probably should have, but I knew Jonathan was doing okay because he was a year ahead of me. And at some point in time, I felt like I was chasing him. I always looked at all the awards he won and the honors he would get. And I was like, oh, Southern California Journalists Association. All right, that's the next thing I got to apply for because he won that. And, you know, this scholarship, he won that, or this internship. So I kept track of him, and it was always nice.
Wait. You were unconcerned about drowning because he was winning awards?
That's how I knew he was okay, because I kept seeing his name in every newspaper and every article. I was like, he's good. He's good.
Cool. All right, so here's the intro that we would normally do for like a more normal show. Jonathan Abrams is an award-winning journalist, as we've just heard. He writes for Bleacher Report. He's the author of 2 bestsellers, All the Pieces Matter, which is an oral history of The Wire, and Boys Among Men, about players going straight from high school to the NBA. He was previously a staff writer at Grantland, the Los Angeles Times, and the New York Times, and as we know, is a graduate of the University of Southern California. Jonathan, did I get all your books? Do you have another book?
I am working on another one. It's been my concern for the past couple of years. Yeah, it's on the way, in the pipeline.
Do we get to know what it is?
It's oral history of hip-hop's key evolutionary moments. So it's been a lot of fun and a lot of difficulty getting interviews lined up for it, but I've made a lot of progress and trying to string it all together now.
Have you, of course, I guess you've listened to that Mogul podcast?
Yeah.
How great is that thing? That's one of my favorite things of all time. Okay, Adena, you're here to kick off the show in style. Do you want to take us on your magical journey?
Yeah. So I just found out also the other day that when I'm screen sharing, you guys can still see me. So I'll pretend to like do things. But so I have some clips of 2 things. So we got, what NBA players are doing on lockdown, which is what we normally go through. And then a surprise diss track from Aaron Gordon. So let's check out. So this week's theme is athletes doing athletic things, I guess you would say. So doing either their sport or other sports. So first up is Steph Curry. Apparently that was a challenge between Steph and Dude Perfect. So he was doing trick shots. Thought it was kind of cool, especially with the Curry hoodie on. Next is Seibel. He does like a little basketball obstacle course in his house.
Wait, Adena, I didn't see Steph.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, wait, I'll rewind.
I'm seeing a vestibule or something. Anybody else seeing that?
Stop share.
Hold
Let's
on.
try one more.
Maybe it's just me.
No, I saw Jordan Clarkson on the bottom of the screen and nothing happened.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll try one more time.
Okay. Oh.
Sorry. Lot going on, lot going on. Tell me, do you?
there we go.
He's Steph now?
Curry.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about
There's
that.
no
All
way
right.
he makes this.
Take two, take two.
Oh.
Steph got that was like I said, it was a challenge between him and Dude Perfect. I think it might have been a plug for a golf brand too, but nice shot, Steph. Next up is Philly Seibel. He's doing some kind of indoor obstacle course. He was upset. Someone sent him 2 basketballs, and he's like, I live in an apartment building. What am I supposed to do with this?
2 basketballs. I don't know about you, but I live in an apartment building, and I don't know what they expect me to be doing with this.
Only one basketball. Oh, here we go.
Round 2. Are you ready?
I thought that was pretty dope.
So we all assume he lives with a professional video producer, right? That's the only way.
Right.
Apparently, and kudos to doing it with the socks on, because I think that's what most of us would do, right?
I mean, everybody loves him, right? You have to love that guy. Like, that's just how it goes. Yeah.
And you could tell that video I definitely love him, but you could also tell it was from like early pandemic because his lineup was still intact. And as someone who's struggling too, I'm like, damn, it looks good.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. Next up, we got Trae Young. He did his own version of the 3-point contest, complete with not full uniform, but jersey. I love the music too. He starts to heat up on the back end.
One of the best shooters of all time.
Yes. Another professional camera person, apparently.
Yeah.
2. Are you ready?
Where he discovers the door is a backboard.
One key takeaway, he owns a lot of socks.
Yes. And the follow through.
Nice.
Yeah, I dug that one.
What the hell? David can't handle it.
Last one. Jordan Clarkson, he takes me down memory lane. With the music in the background, I'm gonna let y'all guess. I don't know if any of you played the video game that this comes from, but it's pretty dope. And I don't know what's going on in this video. I'll let you guys watch press play.
There's a wine drinking video game?
Yeah, it's definitely wine. A little puzzle. Oh. Yeah, so a lot going on, lots to digest in that one. I actually feel like they did this more than one time, and this is probably take 3, especially when it came to the Jenga shot. And Jordan Clarkson might have been a little tipsy when he did it. Cool. So do you guys want to move on to Aaron Gordon?
Wait, can you just tell me what the video game is?
Oh, the video game. It was Nintendo 64 Super Mario.
Judy guessed it. She said Yoshi's World, whatever that means.
Oh, you know what? So it was actually a twofer because they took that soundtrack from Yoshi's World and threw it into Mario 64 for like a good little surprise snippet level. So Judy gets the OG credit.
I just want to say that's the longest Jordan Clarkson's ever gone without shooting a basketball.
Oh, damn.
But
I've watched the Jazz play a lot.
Exactly. The Jenga is what got me. So next up, let me close this one up.
But now it's getting serious.
Yes, now we're getting serious. Now
Yeah.
we're getting to battles, and your boy Aaron Gordon dropped a diss track for.
There's wine in both, though. Just noting.
Oh.
Yes.
Look at the name on the bottle.
Pandemic the NBA players in Pandemic are just like us. They're drinking a lot of wine.
Just like us.
So this was a subtle shot at D Wade because of D Wade cellars. He's actually drinking, like Jonathan just said, he's drinking D Wade's wine. Wow. And shout out to D Wade cellars. They just came out with a bottle of white that I'm about to cop. But I just think this video is the epitome of I have a lot of money, I'm bored, and I've been in my feelings since February, just since last All-Star. It's called 9 out of 10, alluding to D Wade giving him a 9 out of 10 and having him miss the dunk contest. So let's take a look.
I'ma keep it zen. 9 out of 10, can you please fix your lens? 9 out of 10, got you playing pretend. 9 out of 10, here we go again. 9 out of 10, could've bought the family Benz. 9 out of 10, are you making amends? 9 out of 10, I probably lost an M.
This shit ain't nothing, man. Let it sink in. Used to hoop in your Converse so comfortably. Knew one day I'd be good and you'd come for me. Didn't know it would make me this hungry. Looking at your judgment and everyone's wondering. Brought the heat to Windy City, did you see the damn coat? Saw you in the hallway, you stay young and put on a show. Didn't know that's the code, but you're about to get rolled. Even Adam Silver told me I deserve the gold. Didn't get the trophy, but I got something to hold. Jeez, forgive me, bro, I won't sell my soul. Big chillin', paint me as a villain. I jumped over the biggest dude in the building. God willing, the best and I still am. Your judgment gives me no fulfillment. I see you, young OG, I thought you saw the same in me. Legend in my city, promise I'ma make you believe. 6 years in the league, just wetting my feet. Them Miami boys is cool, I'm still checking the heat. I appreciate the text and you checking for me. Dreams of a dunk trophy, resting in peace. Reverend Jackson said that's some bullshit. Lights, camera, action, you're the culprit. Queen Latifah said we do it for the fans. Showed these scars and she said she understands. Still trying to jump Shaq for the last one. Been cool since Uncle Drew, so bygones we get past them. Let me set the record straight. Perfect, I got 8. That'll ring bells all the way to heaven's gates.
You kidding me? This ain't right. This ain't right.
This shit ain't nothing, man. Let it sink in.
Thoughts, fam? Thoughts?
I was not expecting the references to Queen Latifah and the Reverend Jackson. Those are unexpected surprises.
And Heaven made an appearance too.
Yes. There's a lot of drops, a lot of surprises in there. Coach, thoughts?
I don't know. I watched him yesterday or 2 days ago on Synergy breaking down his isolation defense. I was really happy with that. I really don't care what he does off the court.
No, but here's the thing. So the story is that I don't know who to believe here. This is total rumor mongering, but the story is that the judges of the dunk contest made a pact to basically rig it to make it a tie. And do you know this story? Is this?
No, I've never heard this before.
The story that is going around the internet, which might be total horse crap, which TrueHoop stands against repeating, but I'm going to repeat it, is that he's mad because Dwayne Wade was one of the judges, and the judges made a pact to score the finals as a tie. Dwayne Wade went around and said, yeah, we're going to give every one of them a 10. And then Dwayne Wade didn't. He gave Aaron Gordon a 9, which gave, I'm blanking on Dwayne Wade's Miami Heat guy.
Adena Jones.
Right. So it was so it was like they made a plan to rig it as a tie, and then Dwayne Wade had his more secret plan, and so now Aaron Gordon is pissed.
But
I don't think
really
what happened. I love this.
I don't think that's a rumor. Like, I think that's like Common said that's what they had all planned to do, right? Like, okay. I think he told Ramona.
It's a fact.
Common says that it's true.
Okay.
He is Chicago.
So with that, I'm all in. I'm like, screw Dwayne Wade. I think Aaron Gordon should make 10 albums of this. I'm in for all of it. Like, I love it.
Listen, I'm on some, after watching The Last Dance, which I think everything in life goes back to The Last Dance now for the next is, and seeing how salty Isaiah Thomas was, not Isaiah, Jordan and Isaiah, they were so salty. Like, if this is how players get their emotions out right now, I'm okay with this release, because we don't want, like, 20 years later, Aaron Gordon in a documentary upset about an 9 out of 10. So I'm here for this artistic expression.
Well, and how lucky that there's someone on the call who's writing a book about the history of rap who can now put this in the book. Perfect.
How many chapters should Aaron Gordon's diss song be?
I expect to see line for line breakdowns of the lyrics. So,
yeah, we can get those to you. Don't worry, John. You'll have the lyrics.
I thought he had a good flow and good bars. Check out the rest of his. I guess there's like 2 more tracks, but that's a discography for an NBA player. So.
What are the other 2 tracks on?
One he has with a rapper named Mo is called Pull Up. It's my husband said it's very Drake-ish. just take from that what you want. And the other one, I forget the name of it, but they all really have like the same flow. So it's just like this monotone feel, but he gets away with it.
He's alone, right? I mean, he's doing this without a producer, or is he?
Well, that one I want to say without a producer, obviously, but the Pull Up one with Mo, like that was a full-fledged pre-COVID like shoot, and it actually was pretty decent.
Yeah, I thought the worst part of the whole thing was the slow-mo, like really lame dunk. You know what I'm talking about? That was like, what are you doing?
It was like, I'm in pandemic, let me try this out. He had a zebra wallpaper and stars on the ceiling. That was the part that I thought was pretty impressive.
I don't know. Okay, Adena, thank you. Can you hang out for the rest of the show and make fun of John?
Wi-Fi. I've reserved the Wi-Fi. I want to hear everything that my fellow Trojan has to say today.
All right, it's a Trojan show today. John, because you were coming on the show and wrote the amazing book about The Wire, we got in this conversation David and I did where it turns out he has never seen The Wire. He's a little, I get this. When I was in your stage with little kids, I stopped liking any kind of violence. I just was like, it's just too traumatic for me to watch. But he has the impression The Wire is pretty violent, which has kept him away. But I ended up making this sort of improv tirade yesterday about how it was basically Shakespeare and how he needed to plunge in. I don't know, Dave, did you actually even watch any since we talked? No.
I did just because my brother turned 50 yesterday. So we did a 2-hour Zoom call with my whole family. But I will. I mean, you said the first episode is good. I've heard, of course, the writing is brilliant. But that show and Breaking Bad are 2 shows where I'm sure the dialogue's incredible and the acting's amazing. But I just think there's a lot of sadness. And I deal with enough sadness every day and drama. I've got freaking almost 9-year-old twins. My life is dramatic enough. But I'm open to the idea of watching the show because I heard it's like the best show ever done on TV.
I mean, it's a cops and robbers type show. That's the premise. But like, I think in the course of 5 seasons, a gun goes off maybe like once or twice. That's it. They never show the cops with guns. It's all about investigations and wiretaps, especially in that first season. And I will give this kind of warning to most people that you have to really kind of trudge past those first 4 episodes because they're really just kind of setting the world. You're going to be confused about stuff. Make it past the first 4 or 5 episodes and it's downhill from there. You'll start realizing what everybody's talking about.
All right.
I think it, to me, like it, all right. So the dude, David Simon, who created The Wire was a city desk reporter in Baltimore and evidently gathered a tremendous intimate knowledge of how the city really works behind the scenes. And it struck me like, once you know as much as he knows, you can't tell it in the newspaper. The newspaper isn't the right format for that, right? He had to invent a new thing, kind of, right? To describe how the world really works. You going along with me on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, before The Wire even came out, he wrote these two amazing nonfiction books, Homicide and The Corner. And The Homicide was a year covering Baltimore homicide and what the detectives and police department went through. And then The Corner was almost like the perspective from the street and people who are being impacted by drug abuse and the nuclear family that's falling apart in inner city Baltimore because of that. And The Wire is almost like a combination of those two worlds, being able to show both perspectives. And then as the seasons go on, you obviously get more different perspectives of these different institutions that people rely on that often fail us.
Yeah, that I don't know. At one point, a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, what's Mikhail Prokhorov really do, right? And there's no way to tell it in 500 words. You know what I mean? Like Putin does this, and then there's offshore money like that, and then the Nets can help you avoid sanctions. But you have to write a whole season of The Wire or something to
I would watch that.
Across.
Are you working on that, Henry?
Honestly, I have literally written something like 80,000 words on Prokhorov. I'm not even kidding. Like, so and it's not. I don't have the HBO offer or whatever. Like, but
you don't have it yet.
But if anybody's working on it, it's definitely me. All right. So you told me a really fascinating thing, which is that the same woman who cast Ozark and The Wire and Atlanta, and you know her, this is genius. Like, she's obviously genius. All these shows have people who I've never heard of, who are freaking unbelievable.
Yeah, Jared Hector got it in the chat. Alexa Fogel, she's a extremely talented woman, and she like, for a lot of her characters, it just feels like those people like exist in that world, right? Like if they weren't in this show, you would just see them like walking around in inner city Baltimore, like Bubs from that show, or like Ruth Langmore in the Ozarks, and The Wire, I think or Atlanta is so wonderfully casted as well, where it's really just an art for her to be able to pick these people and have them be believable in that world.
How does she do that?
I think it's a process. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with her, and I don't even know if she can really describe it right? It's like a process. It's an innate feeling. She has a deep reservoir of contacts of people who she's seen audition before, so she knows people that she can call back up, for maybe they auditioned for her freaking 5 years ago, and she just thinks that they're fit right now in this new show that she's casting for. So I think it's just a real wealth of knowledge. And she started on Broadway 30 something years ago. She's like best friends with Laura Linney, the person who plays Mindy Bird in Ozark. Yeah, she's a great woman.
This is a pretty crazy move for you to pitch a Wire book while you were a basketball writer. How did that? What made you think that was the next move for you?
As much as I love basketball, I've always thought of myself as a journalist first. I mean, I started at the LA Times, and I was covering courts and doing a bunch of different stuff. So as much as I always want to have at least one foot in basketball, I have interests elsewhere, and I just like exploring different topics.
Yeah. So David has an idea about combining your two books. David, are you there? Well, is David literally frozen, or is he just sitting very, very still?
I can't tell.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's gone. That was a great moment of television.
He's back.
Okay. Are you back?
I heard you guys. You just couldn't hear me.
That was weird. You looked like you were just angry.
No, not angry. I heard everything you said.
You had to, go with your good idea about combining John's two books.
Well, when he was describing your books, John, I said, if it sounds like if those two books had a baby, you could do a long series on the underbelly of basketball in America today. As someone who's coached as long as I have, working with lots of inner city kids and NBA agents and NBA teams and college coaches, all of that. You've got the FBI investigations going on now. It's less than 1% of what's really going on. And I've dealt with this organically now since pretty much the early 90s when the sneaker companies got really, really involved. So you couldn't do it in a book. You couldn't do it in a movie. It would have to be multiple years of stories, and the characters that I've witnessed firsthand are almost impossible to believe, but they're real. What's your thoughts, and how much do you know about that part of this world?
I mean, I feel like that's a lot, and that's always been there, right? Whenever you have money and money to be made, especially with people, a lot of these cases coming from families who are expecting financial windfalls who didn't have it before, there's always going to be nefarious characters trying to get that money, right?
That's right.
So I do feel like those two worlds are really, really combined. And I feel like maybe George Dorman from Sports Illustrated was trying to do like a TV show like that. I want to say, like, I heard something. George wrote a really, really good book. I don't know if you guys have seen it, called.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I have it here.
Yeah. It was on Southern California. He was supposed to be a phenom. Demetrius Walker, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Play Their Hearts Out, I want to say is the
Right.
name of the book. And it was really, really good. He really followed the team around and worked on this book for like 8 years. So I think he would be a great person to do something like that.
I get this like David, who are we talking about? Oh, okay. So to the extent I've had exposure to like power brokers of underworld of basketball, right? From afar, you get the kind of the NCAA view of like who's good and evil, and then they'll tell you like these certain characters are the kingpins of the underworld, right? But then as you get to know the characters, we were talking about the rest in peace Brett Barrett, or I did this whole series on William Wesley. But like once you get closer to them, like it flips. So like it seems like Brett Barrett, would brag about his primary role in influencing young basketball players, and he was the guy buying the cigars in the hotel lounge bar for whoever mattered, and on and on. Let's not retell that whole story now. But once you see him, like, oh, he actually, I think, or Sonny Vaccaro, for crying out loud, like all of these characters are flawed, but it's not the tidy story that we thought it was. And very often when it comes down to like, hey, here's someone who fell out of the game and really is on hard times and needs help, like it's the bad character who's actually more decent.
No, and I think that's how you make like the world richer if you're doing a fictionalized version, because in all these type of worlds, it's like it's not black and white. There's so much gray where people can be trying to help themselves and also actually trying to help these families, and I'm sure that coaches ran into that a lot of times.
Yeah, I've had dinner with I think it was the 20th anniversary of Raleigh Massimino's championship at Villanova. I had dinner with Raleigh and Sonny. And yeah, those guys know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. But compared to who I've also had to deal with, those two men are wonderful. I dealt with far less competent, far more corrupt people who are scoundrels. And you would think they were the boy next door. They were not. And even in girls basketball, in fact, one of the worst guys I ever met was just a regular looking white dude worked at a shoe store. But he was he was a disaster of a man, and he exploited women just as much as the guys on every way possible. And it's just everywhere you look. And the NCAA knows, and all the major college coaches know what's going on. But I was telling Henry before we went on, they know how to deal with this. So they don't want to have everyone look and change it. It's almost like America in the 50s and 60s dealing with dictators. At least they knew how to deal with it. So that's exactly what these very famous college coaches are doing in many cases, because, hey, I know this guy's corrupt, but I know how to deal with him, so I don't want him to get in trouble and open the whole thing up again. So it's just a mess. And the ones who the victims are the players and the parents who just don't understand the business at all. And then you throw in the billions of dollars from sneaker companies and colleges, and that just creates this maelstrom that no one really has a handle. It takes years to process through it. I've lived it for 30 years now.
I mean, can you imagine trying to be a parent and like you don't know the basketball world, but you know that your kid plays basketball. I mean, he's talented, and then just trying to like dip your toes in that for the first time ever. Like, I cannot imagine trying to be a parent and trying to navigate that whole process.
Right, I deal with it every year, and they don't know who to believe. So luckily for me, I'm old enough now where I've got a track record, and I've got young men who have now become very famous NBA players who would tell a family, just listen to this guy. And I'm not an agent. In some cases, I'm coaching these kids for their high school team. And the parents don't even trust that we will get your kid. We just got a kid a scholarship the other day. And his parents never came to a game all year. We played 32 games. And she told our head coach, because I just volunteered the other day, I just didn't believe y'all were for real. I didn't want my son even to play for you guys. And now he's got a scholarship. He's going to play college basketball at a really good place for free. And now she thinks we're great. But she didn't come all year because she's been lied to for 5 or 6 years of his life. So why would it be any different? She assumed we were lying too. We weren't. But this is what you said exactly right, John. How would they know who to believe? It's crazy.
You know that, and also when you're 17, 18, 19, doesn't part of you just want like the normal thing, right? Like if someone said, oh, hey, go to this special out of the way university where they don't have the corruption, right? Part of you is like, no, I just want to go to the normal place where they do the normal thing. But the problem with NCAA basketball is the normal thing is totally corrupt, right? Yeah.
It is. How much do you guys think the G League select team is going to change things? I'm sorry if you were going to bring that up next, but I'm curious for coach's thoughts.
Yeah.
What was the question?
This new deal where the players can go get paid a decent salary in the G League to skip college. Do you think it'll change things? It was
shocking to me to learn that they don't want them to play in games. So initially I thought they were going to pay Jalen Green $500,000 to be in the G League, and I was thrilled. I've been saying this for a long time now, that just treat it like Major League Baseball, who has an amazing farm system. And there are some very good G League coaches, and over the years there'll be more and more. And let's develop these players instead of letting them go to Europe and something never come back or whatever. If they want to go to Europe, that's fine. But I thought the G League had a chance to do it. And now I'm reading that Green won't be in the league. It's very weird. It's obtuse. So he's going to be paid all this money for the NBA to develop him, but he's going to be playing like exhibition games. But in reality, games are the best teachers we have. If you don't care about winning, where is the accountability in the process to learn? So they screwed it up.
So in this question, Coach, in this case, it seems like the only person who's benefiting is the league because they're holding this great player and they're like keeping him in a fishbowl, but the players are not going to be able to learn and develop. But the league secured them in the G League and in NBA, basically, right?
Well, the money's nice. I mean, he wouldn't make $500,000 anywhere else in the world for sure at this age. He can't help an NBA team win almost for sure. Some rookies can, but it's very, very rare, especially ones that are 18. But what you said is right. He is not going to develop the way he should develop. And we're going to know 3 or 4 years down the road if he's underachieving, like this experiment failed. And we don't want it to fail. The best thing they can do is just treat him like anyone else. I don't mind paying him the extra money. There's a value to his ability. Pay him his value for it, and let him be in the G League and work his butt off like everyone else, and fail and lose games and everything else. That's how you get better and connect with people that will be future teammates of his. I don't understand that process at all, and I think he could actually fight back if he wanted to and say, "Let me just play the games."
Here's my dark concern here is that a lot of these basketball competition committee type decisions of like how you structure the game, the people on the committee, if they know basketball, they're existing current NBA head coaches or GMs, right? These are people who make millions and millions of dollars and are very protective of their jobs, right? And they have been telling the league forever, Jonathan wrote a book about it, that basically there's a problem with high schoolers. Like they're not up to it. But you, David, might think that actually the problem is the coaches aren't up to it. It's just more work as a coach, right? You have to coach differently and more compassionately and more understanding with more teaching and more time and whatever. And like, my worry is that if they put Jalen Green on a team and he's under, a Ryan Pannone or whoever it would be, right? and he totally blossoms, guess who's on the hot seat now, right? Are all the coaches who told the league that high school players shouldn't come straight to the pros because they aren't up to it.
I'd love to hear John's view. Obviously, he wrote a book about it. It is, I mean, yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. I think there's 100 more players a year that graduate high school that could be drafted by an NBA team or be part of an NBA team, be part of the G League process, just like Major League Baseball has it with minor league, and end up being good enough to be in the NBA for years to come. And yeah, of course, I mean, I have teenage kids. They're stupid compared to they will be when they're 22 and 23. They're still teenagers, but that's part of the process of growing up, and we have to allow for that. They'll mature better if they make those mistakes, and certainly on the court, they're going to read a pick and roll bad, whatever. Like, why are we so panicked about that? You'll hear all the time, guys, on TV, how a player makes a rookie mistake. Meanwhile, the same veteran who's 28 makes the same mistake a minute later, but it's not a rookie mistake. No, it's just a mistake. Like, you just got to make the mistake over and over until the smarter guys stop making it as frequently. Okay, Chris Paul is different than he was when he was 19. But there's no question these guys should be in the so-called best league in the world, and we should be embracing their failures because they'll stop failing soon enough.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Coach. And there's different levels of these guys who come from high school. There's LeBron James, who everybody in the world could see that he was ready to come out of high school when he came. And, Ben Simmons could have probably obviously he wasted a whole year of his life at LSU, and he could have came into the NBA and contributed right away. And then there's guys who, somebody like Jermaine O'Neal, if you go back and look at where he came, I think it helped him to be able to sit on Portland's bench for a few years before he became a star in Indiana. So it depends on the player, and it also depends on the organization. And I think organizations today are so far ahead of where they were when the first wave of players started coming from high school. The leagues are smarter now. They're invested in seeing these guys succeed. I remember, Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry telling me that when they first got to the Bulls, it was just like they were on their own with bank accounts and millions of dollars and finding out where to live and where to go and how to eat for the first time in their lives. There's no organization today that would ever think of just letting this huge investment just be off on their own. It just doesn't make sense. Then it didn't make sense, but now people really recognize how little sense it makes. And I just think the NBA is so much smarter now, and it's such a better place to be able to develop these kids today that is, I've been trying to say it for years, but high school players should be allowed into the NBA.
Of course.
You do. I cited way too much, but this Michael McCann study that, like, the more years you are in college, the more likely you are to get arrested, and the worse you are likely to play in the NBA. Like,
wow,
what the hell are we trying to teach them?
Wow.
I'm gonna say, if you're a data scientist, I have a nephew he's got a chance to be one of these crazy brilliant data scientists that maybe decides to study pandemics now instead of something else like hedge funds or basketball because of what's going on. And he's going to go to Duke. He could have gone to a lot of amazing schools, but he loves basketball. What if someone wants to hire him in 2 weeks and say, we don't need you to go to Duke. We'll teach you while you're working for our firm to solve this crisis. He'll be allowed to go. But if he was a basketball player, he can't. That alone just never made sense to me and never will. But Henry, I think your point is brilliant. And something I've really thought about. There is more to do to take care of an 18-year-old than a 25-year-old typically. Obviously, there's exceptions. And so so more is required of the team. Jonathan's right. Our teams there's no Kwame Browns anymore. I coached against Kwame Brown in high school.
Yeah, that's to me, so Kwame Brown is the proof that Michael Jordan's bad at running things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's Michael Jordan who doesn't want Kwame Brown, right? Like, or LeBron wants his teammates to be like Mike Miller, who are a 100% guaranteed to show up on time and shoot in the gym on their own and do everything. So there's no management whatsoever, right? Like, but then there's the trickier, high risk, high reward employee like young Kwame Brown, who maybe could have been fantastic.
He could have. I mean, if I know anything about basketball, which some people would argue that I do, I coached against him.
I would not argue that.
The summer before his senior year in a game, and I was coaching for a friend who was having his son was born here So I drove his team over, and he was breathtaking. And I've seen everyone, Carter, Stackhouse, Marbury, coach those guys. He absolutely should have been the first pick in the draft, and should have been a many-time All-Star, and a sweet kid, very humble, hardworking, amazing teammate. And if Michael Jordan, here's an easy way to look at it. If you guys have watched the documentary, which I know Henry hasn't, if Michael Jordan treated Kwame Brown like he did Dennis Rodman, all right, Kwame would have been a multiple-time All-Star. But he didn't. And it wasn't just Jordan. It was the franchise, as Jonathan's point. They were clueless how to take care of a boy that didn't know yet how to be a man. He ain't the first.
Yeah.
Okay? And we're better at that now, I think, than ever before. GMs are getting smarter. And coaches, Phil Jackson, we said this the other day. Phil Jackson really I said this yesterday on the show. He really saw some humanity in you back then that I don't think a lot of coaches did. We were still too old school like Bobby Knight. Phil realized everyone ticks differently. And now we're better than that as an organization in the NBA than ever. We can take these kids and develop them, and we lose less of them than we did even before. And even back then, the tracker was pretty good for preps to pros. We'd be better now, for sure.
Yeah. I also think one other thing to add is that for the elite players today that are coming out of high school, the guys who have been ranked top 10 every year of their class, they're already professionals in every sense of the word for the most part. And they're used to dealing with media. They're used to knowing how to handle themselves off the court because they've been doing it for years now. They've had the spotlight on them. Where, Kwame, somebody who comes from little town in Georgia and is the first pick of the draft, it's a whole different world where today I think these guys are going to be, or they are much more prepped. I remember talking to De'Aaron Fox when he was at Kentucky, and he already sounded like he was a 10-year NBA pro vet just from his quotes.
Yeah, it's a great point. They're much more prepared now, and so why not just do it?
I feel like Jonathan Gerard Hector comes on video at the end of every show, but today he's a off the charts Wire fan, and now he's also fired up on other topics in the chat. I feel like we have to add Gerard and let him just turn him loose. He's got things to add immediately.
No, then you guys think I'm like some crazy person. Like that's no. Wait, I actually have a question. Adena and John, what year did you guys graduate SC?
07.
And I was 05.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a long time ago.
I always thought you were like a year ahead of me. But
I was thinking because I let my parents convince me not to apply to SC because they're like, how are we going to get all the way over there if something happens to you? And I was like, oh my God, you guys are the worst.
No, I know that feeling. I'm from New York, and my mom's my mom's like, you hate me. You're going halfway across the world to Los Angeles. How am I supposed to get to you? So she gave me an American Express card, and she was like, if there's an earthquake, you just swipe it at the airport and leave and come home to New York. That was the thing.
Yeah, that's one of my regrets on applying to SC. But anyway, I was just thinking like if we would have ever crossed paths while we were there. This is actually a draft question, Jonathan, and Adena, I put that in the chat. Like I'm all for, and I think Henry and Coach are on this too. I'm all for abolishing the draft. Like this is stupid. Like we need to stop this nonsense. The idea that, well, all the best teams are going to get the best prospects, all the top guys are going to go to one team. Like there are only 15 spots, guys. Like, and these guys want to play basketball. You think the number one pick's going to want to go somewhere where he can't get in front of like 5 other dudes? Like he's not. He's going to go somewhere where he's going to play. And I think to your point, like with smart coaches and GMs now and smart people running the league, like we can actually do this and it's not bad. It just comes back to that whole idea of we've always done this, so we have to keep doing it. And it's like, no, we don't. We can find something else to do to like make money if money's the issue.
So you would want the amateurs to be free agents when they?
Yeah, absolutely. Free agents. And then it's like if I graduate college and I have like, I'm an engineer. I've got 5 companies bidding for me. Odds are I'm probably going to the place that pays you the most money, right? And or has the best environment. Whoever can do that, and of course, we'll have a salary cap, so I can't go over if I don't have the money. So if it was going to all play for the Lakers, well, they have no money, so they can't play for the Lakers. Sorry, just doesn't fit. I'm going to go to, I don't know, whoever. I think that makes more sense to me.
The Knicks will never, ever get another player.
That's facts.
That's perfect. That's the best argument for it ever.
And that's awesome because they're terrible. Like,
you know what's interesting though, when you say that, Gerard, like when you put it in the terms of an engineer, it makes so much sense. And I think about it the opposite way around. Like when players are going to college, it's so interesting. When they're going to college and they're not going to be paid any money, they have the pick of the litter, right? Like they can go anywhere they want to. But the minute someone's going to change their life and change, you know, their bank accounts, it's like, oh no, we control you and we're going to tell you where you're going. It's also backwards at this point in time.
And I think too, to your point, Henry, you said this before, it forces GMs and franchises to just be smarter and better at their jobs, right? Like we always tell players, you got to develop, everyone's got to be better. Well, why don't owners and GMs have to be better? Like, you know, they all want these protections to protect themselves from doing stupid things. And well, guess what? Sometimes you're going to do dumb stuff. Oh, well, it happens. Sorry, you suck at your job. Maybe get better people who know what they're doing.
So like Knick fans are screaming sell the team to Jim Dolan, right? But the league is saying, here's better players, here's better players, here's better players, right? Like, why is he ever going to learn, right? Like if the league also said like, man, you got to get good at this or you're just going to fall, like, and your team's prospects will be terrible, then you have to get good or move on, right? That I think that market pressure, I mean, at some point I interviewed these people in Europe and they're like, you guys are hilarious. Like we're the socialists, but you're a socialist in sports, right? Like every team just gets whatever, like the worse you are, the more we give you for that in American sports. And in Europe, that just doesn't happen that way. They don't have the draft. And
no one else has the draft. We're the only place that does it. We can put a hard cap in. That's easy to do. And you negotiate that with the overall revenue anyway.
It's pretty hard now. It's a pretty hard cap right now.
Right. So you have that. And that way, if you want to have just two studs, you know, high max, and then the rest, that's your option as a general manager. Good luck if it works. Players are going to look at, as a free agent coming out of college, money, opportunity. And it's not just playing opportunity. Think about players now are so versatile, but they may not want to be that versatile. There's Florida State's getting a kid, 6'8", Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen kind of clone that's being considered a power forward. And I think ESPN ranked him yesterday in their very first mock of 2021 at number 14 pick in the draft. But he's going to be a point guard next year at Florida State, not a power forward. And he might want to play point guard in the NBA. And some teams may not see him as a point guard. Hey, guess what? He's not going to go play for those teams if he was a free agent. So there's lots of angles for teams to take on, hey, we think we're the best fit for you going forward. And then it comes down to agents having a lot of power to be able to explain why these teams are good. But to your guys' point earlier, players are getting smarter. And they're playing. My son plays NBA 2K some weekends. He doesn't play a game. He only drafts and plays this season and then does trades. And he's constantly tweaking what he looks like. He's experimenting with small ball teams and super tall teams. And I'd give him some advice on trying the best shooting teams no matter size or whatever.
So we've come to a pandemic.
He's going to be a GM in like 20 years.
That's what he wants to do, right? Literally. So, but he ain't alone. These players are smarter than ever before. And if they know you stink as a GM, it doesn't matter what you offer them. They know your days are numbered. Just like they're not going to go play for a school that they may always have rooted for because they think the coach can get fired in a year if they're not going to be a one-and-done player. That happens all the time too. So players are smarter, and they only will get smarter if we give them the opportunity to do these kinds of things. And then Henry and I have been saying this for a decade. Like at some point, we're going to get rid of the draft. Every other country is handling basketball just fine without it. Why should the best league in the world have to do it?
I do wonder if Florida, well, I mean, I guess it's the same in free agency, but if like states like Florida and Texas are going to be one up because of taxes and not having to pay as much there.
I do think there's a factor to that, but they're still limited with money. The hard cap's the hard cap, and they are offer other things that are advantageous. And your point about the Knicks is hysterical, but at some point, I mean, there are players that will want to be in New York, including some New Yorkers.
Yeah, I was going to say.
What's wrong with having some regional bias in there, too?
Exactly. I was like, you could want to be in New York. Also, I mean, the financial and business opportunities, if you're in New York,
right.
you don't have to be the man, and you can still get all the contracts rather than be in Florida. And yes, you're tax-free, but what other endorsements do you have?
Portland has some great players. Hey, Henry, Portland.
You're your kids, right? Like you might want to live somewhere,
Right.
love the school
This
there.
is my
or,
point. Is you have
someone was saying to me like that. It might make a lot of sense to be the Christian team. Like I'm an atheist, so it wouldn't appeal to me. Like, but I mean, for real, like you might Jonathan, you live in Charlotte, right? Like it might make sense to just like you might get a bunch of players who want to play for this organization that prays openly in the locker room, this kind of stuff. Like, but you get to really experiment with like what's the organizational philosophy that is a magnet, as opposed to like James Dolan gets a 30th of you just because he wrote a big check a long time ago, and that's that. Like, that doesn't seem good enough to me.
Think about cities like Portland, the Portland, Seattle area, loaded with talent. Portland, Seattle, Memphis, loaded with talent. The state of Oklahoma, Blake Griffin and Trae Young are just two. There would be an affinity for some players to want to stay home. Obviously, LA, New York, Chicago, Miami have big advantages in other areas, but Houston, the big cities, all of those compete beautifully, and then you're held accountable. You can't say, well, we just got lucky in the draft. No, either you did a good job or you didn't in grabbing players. That's how Henry and I see it.
John, it's 54 minutes past the hour, and you have not yet asked a wire question.
Oh, it's coming now.
I'm going to mute myself.
So, Jonathan, first of all the pieces matter is fantastic. Really, really well done. All of your work is good, but I love The Wire.
I appreciate it.
No problem. What fascinated me about the book was the ways in which the actors were so naive and young to know and not really understanding the business and what was really going on here, and so much of the tension on both sides. One of the favorite stories I meant that you talked about was Kima in season 1, played by Sonia San, like really butting heads with David Simon on what kind of story are you trying to tell here, right? Like, is it this idea of life is hopeless for all people who are minorities, or is it no, it's about systems? And I'm just curious for you, as you were going through the process of interviewing, what were like some moments that kind of hit you like, wow, this is an incredible story?
So I think talking with Ed Burns and because he's kind of a recluse, he doesn't do a lot of interviews. I think I had to have a couple people vouch for me. There's been only a couple times in my life where I've just like talking to somebody and I'm like, geez, this guy is so freaking smart. And having him kind of explain his thought process and how him and David worked to combine because everybody knows David Simon, right? He's a genius. He's a curmudgeon, and Ed Burns was the actual police detective from Baltimore who then started working with David Simon. So who also then went on to become a teacher in Baltimore. So much of The Wire, so much of The Wire was based on, his whole life experience and having him explain. Like, I remember when I was leaving his place, I was like, oh, I like called the Uber to come get me. He's like, oh, you didn't call a taxi? Why not call a taxi? These Uber drivers are putting taxis out of business. Like, even just like little things like where he's like just always thinking, his brain's always churning. And that was one of the moments that made me appreciate like the depths that they created The Wire. Because I'm sure it's like this for you. Like, I'll watch The Wire now and I've seen it 7-8 times. You can still pick up new things that you did not pick up before. You can still keep going back, and that's how rich that show is.
I'm in my 20th rewatch, so and I love the fact when you brought up when Pelicanos entered into this scenario, because he really sort of served as that, like in many cases, tiebreaker, right? Because Simon and Burns probably not like wanted to fight, but like, no, this is how you tell the story. No, but this is what actually happened, dude. And Pelicanos is like, all right, like here's how we can make this sort of happen and fit.
Yeah, let's just go forward. He called himself the tiebreaker. And Pelicanos is also, that's the thing about that show, right? Those writers are just like literary titans. Pelicanos and David Simon and Richard Price and Dennis Lehan. And I think they had a couple other people who maybe they tried to get and couldn't, and then even the directors like Ernest Dickerson was one of like Spike Lee's right-hand man for a long time, and a lot of other people go on to do a lot of really, really good things. Like that show was a breeding ground for a lot of different careers to span off and do great stuff.
And the character actors too, right? Like Rach Cathy, who recently passed away, who was Carcetti's campaign manager in season 3. Like, though, I mean, there were so many incredible stories. I think my favorite was early in your book when Michael B. Jordan's character, well, I don't want to spoil it for Coach. Something happens, and it's like, oh no, like what's gonna happen? And like now Michael B. Jordan's like one of the biggest stars in the world, right? Like it's just sort of this idea of like
he'll be fine. He's gonna be fine.
It's just, things work out for you, like it, you know. But Coach, it is. I know you're worried about the violence, like it.
It's not just the violence. It's not just. It's sadness. I can't watch Breaking Bad. Henry told me the opening scene, I think, of Breaking Bad, or one of it was like this incredible scene. I just don't like being sad for story after story. You know, it's hard for me.
Just give it like 100 hours and then see how you feel.
We're not asking for you to devote that much time.
Can I ask one wire question to JA real quick? Also, I have a tendency to call you JA, even though there's a whole nother JA. I'm sorry about that. But The Wire was actually my first exposure to Baltimore. And then, like, when I got to school, I had a roommate that was from Baltimore, and all I would ask her was, like, is it like this? Is it really like this? And so when you were writing the book, and do you think that The Wire is an accurate representation of Baltimore?
So I think I never lived in Baltimore. My sister did for a little while. But I think when the show was coming on, there was a lot of blowback, and I think David Simon even got blowback from the mayor about filming there because they didn't want to be just this city with no hope and no despair. But I think as the years have gone on, it's been appreciated for its accuracy, especially the side of Baltimore that it tried to portray, right? It didn't try to show the inner harbor Baltimore where, you know, somebody may go if they're going to go see an Orioles game. It showed the part of Baltimore that's, you know, 5, 6, 7 blocks away where people are struggling every day with their life. And I think that was really, really an accurate portrayal of, and it's, you know, because one of the messages is like it's not just Baltimore, right? It could be any inner city anywhere across America. But in doing that, they had a lot of specific Baltimore stuff. Like they would go to like the Crab Shack that was, you know, well known in Baltimore. They would use Baltimore lingo. So I think it was universal and also specific at the same time.
That's what was so great about it, I thought, for me. Sorry, Henry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say that was so great about it for me because it, as you said, Jonathan, it replaced it with any other city in America. And this is what the story is, right? Any other inner city that has these kinds of systemic and systematic problems that literally, like, trying to get yourself out of that cycle is impossible. And you know, your title says it, Lester Friedman says it, it is true about the world. All the pieces do in fact matter, right? Like schools, politics, government, this is how everything works. And it's designed that way, right? This is why we are where we are. And it's just fascinating.
Well, and a fair chunk of it is money laundering, right? So like you go to Baltimore and they're like, oh, look at this new row of townhouses, right? But then now that this show exists, you're like, whoa, where did all those dollars come from, right? And we had Oliver Bullock on the show who would tell you that sort of offshore, unaccounted for, unnamed accounts, Delaware Corporation dollars used to be like 1% of all the dollars on the planet, but now it's like 8 to 10% of all the dollars on the planet. So all these things that are being developed in this way used to be a cute little side story in a crime drama, now are like actually really part of our daily lives and how things are funded. Now
you're getting into Ozark territory more.
Yeah, all the pieces matter, John. We gotta go. This is long. I apologize. It's too fun. Thank you, everybody. Anything else you want to add in closing? Anyone got a final closing thought?
Just thank you, everyone, and be safe.
Yes, nice seeing you again.
All right, nice
to see you guys.